What's up, y'all? Welcome to my August reading log. I'm gonna run through every book I read in the month of August, do like 1 or 2 minutes about what I thought of the book, give it a little mini review, and then rate it out of 5. The first book I got here is The Good Asian by Pornsak Pichetshote and Alexander Tefengeki. Tefengi? It's probably Tefengi. I actually just finished this one like the other day, and I really liked it. It's got like a real charm to it, like that noir charm. I like noir stories. I feel like I say I like noir stories a lot, but then when I read them, I'm like kind of disappointed by a lot of them. I don't know if that makes sense. But this one I thought was really like focused. You know what I mean? Like this one they clearly knew what they were going for here. The artwork by Tefengi or Tefeng yeah, Tefengi really fits the writing, I think, and like the tone of all of it. And I love that in comics where like this isn't the most like detail oriented style in the world, which I kind of prefer. I don't really like the superhero house style where everything's got to look like real life, like as close to it. I like this guy's style a lot, but I think it's also like perfect. It feels so like handcrafted to fit the story here. It's about a Chinese cop from a long time ago. I don't want to say like early 1900s, I think. And it's kind of following him through San Francisco. Everybody's super racist. This book provides a lot of like context and like historical information about like what it meant to be Asian in America at that time, which usually I'm not like here for. Like I'm not here. It's gonna sound bad, but I'm not here for like a lesson in a lot of the books I read, or like I don't want it to be educational as much as I just want the story to be good. I feel like a lot of the books that are trying to like teach you something take away from the story just to try and teach you, if that makes sense. So he added a lot of that into this book, a lot of like historical context and everything. And I think it works great. I think The Good Asian, it got some Eisner buzz, so you've probably heard of it before, but I think it's a great story. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Also, these covers by Dave Johnson, killer. Next one is The Golden Age by Roxanne Morel and Cyril Pedrosa. This book, I had like been meaning to get it for a while, and I finally pulled the trigger on it. I got it super cheap used. It was like $8 or something like that, and in great condition too. So this style in this book is incredible. Like this, every page looks like this. I think that this book is working best when it has like these chapter breaks, and then it has these 2-page spreads that all are like gorgeous, kind of setting it up. I think the dialogue is really minimal in like a beautiful way. I think it's so effective. The storytelling in this book is very effective. It's very like it's middle. So I should get the pitch. Middle ages, right? There's kings and queens and peasants, and we're following the princess in this kingdom, who gets kind of she's supposed to be the heir to the throne, and then it's kind of whisked away from her, and we're following her story after that happens. It's very like I hesitate to say this, but it has some of the things that I like from the Game of Thrones show, like just hearing these people talk and like move around together. This book is like definitely less magical and like classic fantasy than like Game of Thrones is, so I don't want to send people in with that being an expectation. But it's I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. At first, I was like, this is moving kind of slow, but like the pace of this book as you continue to read it feels better. Like the more you read this book, the better it is. You know what I mean? And then you start to appreciate the things that you saw before early in the book. Like looking at this again now, I just feel like it's so well done. The dialogue is incredible. A lot of the times I can get lost in the dialogue, especially when people get too fall in love with like the accents and how people used to talk. And these guys sound like they're talking in the Middle Ages, but are still it's not like distracting, you know? I really enjoyed this book. This hardcover is, I believe, the first half of the story, so I will be buying the second one. And reading it, The Golden Age, I think I'll give a 4 out of 5. Big recommend. Beautiful book, too. Beautiful hardcover. Next, we've got Castle in the Stars, book 3 and 4. These books are awesome. I read 1 and 2 last month, so, I had to finish up. These books are sick. Just this format, these like skinny hardcovers, I think that I wish that more places made books like these. It's kind of continuing the story from before. I don't want to get too into it or like show too much because I don't want to spoil people who haven't started it yet. But it's more of this beautiful style that Alex Alice is so good at. Like, this is ridiculous, dude. And there's so many pages like this in here. It's fantastic. It is one of the more creative stories that I can remember reading, and beautifully rendered in this watercolor style. I did find out that apparently these are the last books printed in English, which is like tragic. I think there's 7 books in French, but they just, I guess they stopped making them. Maybe they weren't selling very good. So that makes me sad. I still think it's worth it. If you're one of those people that like you don't want to read a book unless you know that there's like a solid ending in sight, you shouldn't read it, because I don't know if we're gonna get 5, 6, and 7 in English. But if you're cool with that, I think this is a good recommend for everyone. Castle in the Stars, 5 out of 5. At least everything I've read. Up next, we've got the Dr. Aphra Omnibus. This says it's number 1. I don't know if there's a second one. I'm probably not. Well, I don't know. I was going to say I'm probably not going to buy it, but we'll see. I've been chipping away at this book for such a long time. Like, this is a thick boy. Easy. I'm pretty sure it's got more than 1,000 pages to it. So I was like reading this before bed a lot of nights in a row. And overall, I liked it. This is early stuff where she kind of gets introduced. It's not like her own series. Like, she pops up in these Star Wars comics before, which I'm not all that interested in, to be honest. Is like, because those books take place, they're like following Luke and Han and Leia, like in between 4 and 5, I think. And that is not really, I don't need more of that. You know what I mean? I saw the movies. I thought they did fine. I don't need more. But once this book gets to Aphra on her own, I think it's much, much better. The solo Aphra books are sick. And it's very like, everything you've heard about it so far, where it's Aphra, she's like Indiana Jones, but with less morals. And in the Star Wars universe. I think that this book is at its best when Cy Spurrier is writing it, which is like the back end of this book. But overall, I had a good time. I don't know if it was worth reading all this other stuff I didn't enjoy as much. Because it really, I was not enjoying this book that much until I probably got like around halfway, right? Which is like 500 pages, which is ridiculous to me. And maybe that means I'm not like a big, diehard Star Wars fan, and that's all right with me. But Dr. Aphra, overall, I'd say it was pretty good. If you like that like adventure, Indiana Jones, treasure hunter type of stuff, I think you'd probably like this. Still, you do have to be a Star Wars guy to go for it, I think. I'd give Dr. Aphra a 3 out of 5. Up next, we got the Lobster Johnson Omnibus. I wanted to buy this a long time ago before I was really into comics, just because it was called Lobster Johnson, and I'm a simple man. But this book by Mike Mignola, John Arcudi, I should have looked this up. Tanshi Zanjik. We're gonna go for it. I still feel like that's wrong. Yeah, and lots of other artists are in here, but those are like the main 3 guys on this book. I wanted to get this forever ago just because it was called Lobster Johnson. Then I got into comics, and you kind of hear about Mike Mignola, and I had read that Skulldigger book from Black Hammer with Tanshi Zanjik, and I was like, I need to buy every book that he's made, that Zanjik has made. And so this is obviously at the top of the list. It's about Lobster Johnson, who's like this noir, like, vigilante, and not in the way that like Batman's a vigilante. Like, he shoots people, you know what I mean? Like, he finds people who he believes are evil and doing crimes, and he shoots them. And I think overall these people he's killing in the stories are evil, but there's not always like a fact check. He seems very confident in himself in knowing these guys are bad before he shoots them. But I loved this book. Zanjik's style is sick. I love. There's another Zanjik book Ooh, that is such a book coming out, and it's incredible. Like his art style is so like I want to call it cartoony, but I feel like that's not doing it justice. Like he's a very very talented artist, but it's like very simple. I love the colors that Dave Stewart puts on here. I think it all works so well. He a lot of times Lobster Johnson will bust into a room of like evil witches in New York City or wherever this is supposed to take place, and then he'll come in. He will scream justice, shoot everybody in the room, and make it out. And honestly, I could see him do that again and again. I know there's a second omnibus, so I'm for sure getting that. I love this book. There's a lot of magic, but kind of paired with that noir vigilante stuff. It's incredible. I mean, just looking at these pages, dude, if you're not in just looking at these, I don't know what to tell you. I think Lobster Johnson is an absolute banger. So I will give it 5 out of 5. And you will be seeing me talking about the next one soon. Up next, we have Al Capone by Morali and Radice. This book has been like advertised to me on, I think like Amazon's been trying to get me to buy this book forever. And to be honest, I wasn't interested. Like I said before, I don't really like the like biopic books or like the history lessons in books. But I saw the channel Off My Shelves talk about this book, and it made it seem way more interesting. This is like the story of Al Capone, but told by Al Capone, like towards the end of his life while he's in jail. And just having him be this like narrator who's like obviously super biased going through all this stuff, I think is really well done in here. The art style by Radice is one that I really like. I feel like it's very, I don't know what you'd call this. It looks like it's done with like these big like thick like crayons or something. That's definitely not what it is, but I love the texture that comes out of what he's using. I don't know what it is, but it's so good. All these pages are so full of color and like these big panels that show the entire like environment in a really great way. Like lots of shots of the city, lots of shots of these little houses and rooms, and then later on these like huge mansions and things that Al Capone is going through. I mean, this book really, I don't want to say it surprised me, because obviously I bought it because I thought it was going to be good, but I really like the pace at which the story is told. I really like the simple work on a lot of these expressions. I thought this was a really charming book, and charming feels like the right word. Even though he does some gnarly things in this book, the like overall charm of it is like, how can you not like it, you know? This guy's style, he does a lot of this stuff too, where he has the guy's face up front and then all these things that have just happened behind him. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I really like this book. It very much impressed me. I'm going to give Al Capone a 4 out of 5. Next, I got Uncanny X-Force by Rick Remender, Jerome Opeña, Esad Ribic, Phil Noto, all sorts of big names on this one. Yeah, Greg Ticini, I forgot he's in there for a little bit at the end too. Every time I buy comic books, I go, I need to get away from Marvel, I need to get away from DC. And then somehow they know, and they just release a book that I've been looking for a long time. This book was out of print for a while, and then it came back. I'm a huge fan of Rick Remender. Everybody is always talking about his run on Uncanny X-Force. And I like the X-Men. I grew up watching the movies and stuff and watching the animated show. So I was like, let's do it. We'll give it a shot. And this book is definitely, with these Marvel books and DC books, sometimes it can feel like there's just so much homework you have to do to understand what's happening. And this book definitely has that too. You can't just jump into this one, you know? You have to have a good amount of knowledge of the X-Men from before to enjoy it. But that being said, if you did know that stuff, I haven't read that many X-Men comics, but I know about them enough that this is great. You have to know who Apocalypse is and all that jazz. I thought this book was good. It does feel like homework in the way that all Marvel books do. I think Marvel's probably worse about it than DC is, if I had to say. But the art is amazing. It definitely feels like Remender the whole way through. So if you like other Remender books, this one, It's definitely him. There's lots of parts in this book where he like gets to shine into the Remender we know today, right? Like where he can really cook on his like sci-fi or like these weird concepts, and he's just kind of cooking, and you're like, oh, that's it. I can see it. I see what he was going for. Uh, there's some spots with that in here. It introduced me to Phantom X. I'd never heard of him before. But he was like probably my favorite part of this whole series was Phantom X. I liked him. Wolverine, as always, great. Deadpool is really well written in here. The other characters in the X Force were not like my favorites, but they were good, you know. And like the Jerome Pena art is ridiculous, bro. Like this guy is so good. Yeah, the book's good. I mean, if you're in the bag for like these Marvel X-Men books, you're gonna think this is, the greatest book since sliced bread. If you're like me and you are not a huge fan of the big two stuff, that definitely takes away from it. And I feel like reading this book shows you why Remender ended up just making his own stuff in these big hardcovers so he could really cook. Like, I think that people would read this and you'd go, wow, this is so like crazy and out there for like a Marvel book. But if you read Remender stuff, you're like, wow, he's so like put in a box. You know what I mean? You can like feel the handcuffs that they're putting on him, of stuff he can and can't do. But Uncanny X-Force, pretty good. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Up next, we got Firepower, Book 2. I bought the Book 1 Deluxe forever ago, like right when it came out, so I've been waiting for this one for a minute. I wanted to read it in Deluxe and not in all the trades. And this story's, it's good. I think this is a really easy one to get into. So if you're like not a big comics person already, Firepower I think is a fun jumping in point. It's also pretty like all ages, so if you've got a youngin who wants to read some, I think this can be good. It's an all ages book, but it doesn't like pull punches, which I always love. The stakes still feel serious. They have serious conversations. Like everybody has like really real stuff going on. But it doesn't like, it's just not gratuitous, It's not raunchy. This book, it follows Owen Johnson, who's like the chosen one. Very like classic storyline of he travels to the mountaintop and he learns the secret ways, But the point is he can shoot fire out of his hands. He's got the firepower, hence the title. And this is kind of the arc where they're fighting. Well, you don't really know who it is. It's a serpent-themed villain, the faceless villain, for a lot of it. And to be honest, in this deluxe book, in the second one, I think it drags for the first half. And maybe it's because I had to wait for it so long, I was kind of building it up. I think that the back end, like the back third of this book, is like really, really good, where it starts to take a turn on you. And I think it did some unexpected things that made it more interesting. Which is tough though, because this like storyline is such a classic, like old trope that's been done, like a cliche really, in a lot of ways. And so I find it interesting that Kirkman wanted to make a story like this. But he plays with the cliche while like keeping it honest and like still giving you the payoff you want while changing a few things to make it more modern and a little bit more interesting for sure. And Chris Samnee's art is incredible as always. He's so good. He's so good. I think that this book owes a lot to Chris Samnee. Not that Kirkman's writing isn't bad, but like the artwork is what makes this book, I think. And there's lots of huge splash pages of these huge fights with like all these crazy characters. It's pretty fun. I mean, nothing to like, I don't think this is going to be like anybody's favorite book ever, but this is really solid. It's solid. It's good fun. Firepower Book 2. I know I've given a lot of 4s, so I think this is a 4 out of 5 too. Up next, I got Axe Wielder John, written and drawn by Nick Pitarra. And this book was cool. This book is super fun. This is the first Pitarra I've ever read, and I bought it off his like Zoop campaign because I don't think you can find it anywhere else other than buying it straight from him, which good for him. I've never read his stuff before. His style is like really detail oriented, like stuff like this, big detail oriented and grisly, dude. This guy loves to draw some blood and, and guts and chopping people up and all of that. This book's cool. I feel like this is like if I got my hands on this when I was 14 or 15, I think this was incredible, like the greatest book I'd ever read. It has a lot of heart and a lot of like childlike wonder. I don't mean that in a way to like put it down though. I think it's like the biggest strength of this book is that it kind of feels like a teenager's idea brought through somebody with like a supreme skill set like this. And yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun. This is only a part one, which I didn't totally realize when I was buying it, which is more my fault. That's not like the book's fault. So that was a little disappointing, like getting to it and being like, oh, there's still so much more. This is like a definite part one on like a 5-parter or something like that. It could be. Feels like it to me at least. The characters in here are sick. Like this guy, the design is incredible. There's lots of like robots and also old medieval stuff and also, just everything you can imagine is in this book. Very Jeff Darrow, very Shaolin Cowboy. If you read that, and he like talks about it in his writings in the back, how much of an inspiration like Jeff Darrow stuff is. There's a lot of that in here. Yeah, I mean this book's cool. It's solid. I liked it. I would probably give this one a 3 out of 5. Next up, we got Barbarian Lord by Matt Smith. He writes and draws this one. I'm pretty sure this used to be a webcomic. Just the format of it makes me think that. I actually don't know, though. But Matt Smith, I read the first book of his that I read was Lake of Fire. I really liked his style. There's another Matt Smith book that I read this month as well. And Barbarian Lord I thought was very clever. I think it's very creative. It's a little violent, but like this is exactly the type of book like I would have loved when I was younger. I still really like it now. Follows Barbarian Lord, who is a warrior poet, and he goes on like a pretty classic Viking-themed, inspired mission here. It's all black and white, just like this. Matt Smith's art is, I love his artwork. It's very like quaint, I guess is the way to put it. It's like simple and like more, here it's a little bit sillier than it is in his other books, but the action really has a lot of like kinetic energy to it, and the jokes really hit, and it's all because of how well he can draw the acting and expression on all these characters. Also, this format I think really works well for the story too. So Barbarian Lord by Matt Smith. I really like this. I think it's like banging. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. Next we got the other Matt Smith book, Folklords by Matt Kindt and Matt Smith. This book is like takes place in like this fairy tale world. It has our main character, I forget his name, but everybody goes out on a quest in this town, and he picks a quest to find the Folklords, right? Which are like these people somewhere out there that he's not supposed to be looking for, right? It's kind of the gist of it. He dresses up in clothes like this, even though he lives in a medieval town. This book, Matt Smith kind of can be... He can get really meta, and this is definitely one of those books. And I'm not a huge fan of that in general, but this book really worked for me. I think chapter 3 of this book is like... book 3 of this book is an absolute heater, where he does kind of his own Hansel and Gretel type thing. But Matt Smith's art is so good. I feel like it just makes me like a book that much more, just seeing his art, and the colors are really good for it too by O'Halloran. But it just makes it so charming. Like I feel like I can feel what the characters are feeling. The acting's wonderful. It's great. This book overall though was not really doing it for me, but I recommend everybody at least read up until book 3. Folklords, I'm going to give a 3 out of 5. Up next we have Orphan and the Five Beasts by James Stokoe. He writes and draws this one. This is my first James Stokoe that I've like really liked. I read his Godzilla book and that really did not do it for me, but I think I'm just not a Godzilla guy. I don't think that's his fault. This book is a banger. His style is like wonderful and kinetic, and every page is just so full of color and detail and life. It follows, this is the orphan who lives atop a mountain, has been trained by their master, and like this crazy martial arts, and her master tells her of these 5 students he had before who have gone bad, essentially. He thinks they've corrupted themselves in some way. And so now it's up to the orphan to go find them and beat their ass. And that's exactly what she does. This story is so like fun and kind of silly, but it knows it's being silly. It's action packed. It's charming. It was awesome, dude. I loved the plot of this book. I loved the like vibes of this book. I love the dialogue with the characters. The personalities are so like clear cut in this book. There's lots of jokes. This is one of those books that made me laugh while I was reading it, which does not happen very often for me in comics. I think that this book by James Stokoe is an absolute banger masterpiece. It's got to be a 5 out of 5. Up next, I got 20th Century Men by Dennis Camp and Stepan Morian. Dennis? I don't know. This book is incredible. I don't want to give too much away because I think everyone should read this book. Mine, again, fell apart. I left it in the car and I guess it was too hot. The whole thing just fell apart, just like Petrolhead did from the other one. This is basically takes place in the Afghanistan War, I believe, but it's the Afghanistan War if there were superheroes. And I've heard people describe this and they tried to equate these superheroes to other ones that you've seen, but I don't think there's any business doing that because it's very unique pretty much in all of it. I don't know. People have told me that one of the guys is supposed to be like Iron Man. I didn't totally see it. I guess I understand what they're saying because he has a suit of armor, but that's where the similarities end. This book, Dennis Camp's writing is really good, but this book is made by the art, I think. The art in this series is incredible, dude. Incredible. I looked up to see if there's anything else that Stepan Morian has done, and there's not really, at least that I could find, for, comics. But, every page is just, a masterpiece. Look at this, dude. Everything, dude. Everything. The characters are complex and interesting. I found myself having kind of a hard time following the overarching political plots that are happening in here, specifically what's happening in the war. But I don't think that's really what this book is about anyways. It's much more character based. There are probably, I don't know, 3 characters that you really focus up on. 3 or 4, I think. And everything with them is beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, look at this, dude. This is ridiculous. The book isn't usually bound like this. I had to fix mine. I think that 20th Century Men is a read for everyone. It's definitely not meant for kids. So maybe not everyone. But it's a banger, dude. It's a masterpiece. What can I say? 20th Century Men, 5 out of 5. Next is the Jake Ellis series. I read both of these this month as I was trying to find every comic that Tanchi Zajic has made. This one, I believe, kind of put him on the map, and he got some awards buzz. It's a little independent book. I don't know if that's true. That's just how it seemed to me. This story follows Jake Ellis, who is... He's on the run. He gives very, not Jason Bourne vibes, but something similar. This is very Bourne-y. If you like those movies, I feel like you'll like this book. And he's kind of on the run, and he sees this guy who kind of is constantly feeding him advice and telling him what to do to succeed on his missions. See if we can get him. Yeah, this guy looks like this. And this is Jake. And it kind of follows him as he's getting chased down by the shady government organization, to put it simply. This book feels like a 90-minute action movie in the best way. Those are the movies I grew up on. And it feeds into that concept while also hinting at a more dense, complex plot underneath it all. Tanchi Zanchik's art is perfect for this. I wish he could draw every comic book, and I think the world might be a better place. His art style is so good, and the colors really add to it too. This one is the big sell is definitely the relationship between Jake and I can't remember the main guy's name. I'm terrible with character names. But their dynamic is the most interesting part, and then watching them just take apart these government agents. just throughout the whole book, is sick. This book, I think, is a banger. Where is Jake Ellis? I think kind of loses its simplicity, right? Like, this book is so straightforward and so, like, clear in what it's trying to do, and I feel like this one gets kind of bogged down just trying to, like, sequelize it, you know? Like, they're trying to make it more interesting, trying to show that the organization that they're working for is, like, more complex, but wasn't what I really liked about the first book. I just like their dynamic, and it feels like there's less of that in the second book, which is a shame. So if other people are reading this, you could probably read this one and then be fine. Like, I don't think this one is, like, required reading at all, to be honest. But more Zajic art, so that's never a bad thing, right? I'll give Who is Jake Ellis probably a 4 out of 5. Where is Jake Ellis? Probably a 2 out of 5. Next up, I got Twilight Children, written by Gilbert Hernandez and Darwin Cook. Now, I love Darwin Cook, which I know does not make me, like, unique. Like, everybody loves Darwin Cook, as you should. The artwork's incredible. I have not read anything from Gilbert Hernandez. I know they did Love and Rockets, but I just haven't read it. And this book is, like, sci-fi, I guess, but, like, the most grounded sci-fi. Like, there's one sci-fi element to it, and everything else is just following this, like, seaside town. These glowing orbs are appearing here, and they're, like, changing people, like, making weird stuff happen. And that's just kind of following what happens in the town with this. There's not really, like, a main character. It's really following everybody. And to be honest, this book, I don't feel like I get it. You know, I read through the whole thing. I felt very confused by it. It's a pretty quick read. So I tried to, like, actively slow myself down to, like, figure it out. And I don't know. It just didn't really do it for me, which is a shame because it seems like everybody involved with this was super talented. This one is definitely one of those books that is, like, not talked about. So when I saw it, I was like, this is crazy. How these are, like, A-list names, I feel like. Why does nobody talk about this book? And I feel like it's just kind of lost in its own sauce. It feels like maybe there's some meaning to it that I'm not getting, but it didn't really do it for me. And because of that, Twilight Children's probably going to get a 2 out of 5. Last one here, and the smallest book of the bunch, too. It's much smaller, I can show you. Next to this little guy is Homunculus by Joe Sparrow. I saw this online, saw some of the art. It seemed like, I don't know, I liked the style of his drawings. It very much reminds me of, like, an animated show. And it follows through that way. So, Homunculus, this is the Homunculus, for lack of a better term. It's about a robot that is made, and it's all from the robot's point of view, and you kind of sit with it and its creator as she tries to teach it and help it become... I don't know what she's helping it become, but help it, like, grow and learn. And I love this book. I'm not going to show you too much because it's a very fast read. It's pretty short, and I don't want to spoil anything. But it very much makes me think of, like, a Love, Death, and Robots episode. It's like a one take all the way through from this fixed perspective. The characters, although there aren't that many, are very well written. And I feel like this idea is so sharp. Like, everything is pointing in the same direction. You know what I mean? Like, everything is so efficient in the storytelling of it. And I think it's beautiful. I think everybody should read this book. I think it's beautiful. It's very short. Homunculus by Joe Sparrow. I will have to find some more Joe Sparrow books. I think Homunculus gets a 5 out of 5. That was beautiful. So that's it for the August reading log. Still trying to stick to one a month. I feel like this one hopefully was a little bit faster than the other one. Yeah, if there's any comics that you're reading right now or books that you'd like to recommend, please leave them in the comments. I appreciate y'all. See you on the next one.